It's Saturday, October 12, 2019, and this is Globespan 24x7 Week in Review. My name is Shakima Day. We'll take a look at some of the major stories for the week beginning Monday, October 7 to Friday, October 11, 2019. A fire of unknown origin on Monday destroyed a two-story house at North SOPHIA, Greater Georgetown, leaving a family of 5 homeless. We'll find out more in this report. Based on reports received, the Lot 135 RR North SOPHIA home was occupied by a middle-aged couple, Umawati Premraj, known as Chinese, her husband who is differently abled, along with her daughter, son-in-law, and a grandchild. According to Premraj, she and her granddaughter were in the upper flat of the house when someone alerted her to smoke emanating from the roof sometime around 12:30 hours today.
And I come with this child and I check and she get a note and I read in the note. And a neighbor's son called and asked if I cooking upstairs and I said no. He said your kitchen there on fire. And after they said the kitchen there on fire, my husband bring out my husband because he got half a pot. And I called for a buyer and said, come buy at the house of born, bring out this man to me. And I take this child and I come out.
Premraj said she is devastated by the incident, especially since she did not manage to save anything from the home, which she worked very hard to build.
He said nothing but my husband and this child. Nothing to save. When I got kitchen upstairs, I got kitchen, bring down all my stove and fridge downstairs. Everything for me damaged.
The devastated woman said that she is not sure what may have caused the fire, but explained to Globespan 24x7 News that she does not have any electrical appliances in the area where the fire started. Premraj, who operates a small shop in the lower flat of her home, said that is her only source of income, since she does not work, nor does her husband, because one of his legs was amputated due to diabetes.
Well, that little shop is government because he don't get pension, he don't get nice, he don't get no support. So the little shop, that was help. We pay the bill, eat from it. We don't get help, we don't get no support.
Premraj's daughter was very emotional about the incident. She said it is very hard to believe that the home she grew up in was destroyed by fire.
I live here since I was the age. I was the age of 11 years. And my mother worked so hard to build this here. And I can't see how it destroyed just like that. All your documents, transport, bank book, everything damaged. Look, my stepfather's situation, he foot cut off. He's a diabetic. Where they gonna go? Look how much years my mother living. My mother walk at BR. She walk out kid for build this here. Everything loose, everything.
No place to go, the Premraj family is seeking the public's assistance in trying to get back on their feet. Persons who would like to make a donation to the family could contact them on 592-617-5234 or 642-3858. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day. The 13th National Two-Shows Council Conference was convened on Monday at the Architecture Convention Center, with one of the main items on the agenda to be addressed is the land rights of the indigenous people. We'll take a look back at that report. In his welcoming remarks at the 13th National Two-Shows Council Conference earlier this morning, Chairman of the NTC Nicholas Frederick stressed that despite the Council making great strides over the past years, more needs to be done as it relates to land rights.
And we expect more, especially one that is very important to us, which is our rights to our lands. Without our lands, the indigenous people will not be able to sustainably develop themselves.
Recently, the opposition People's Progressive Party in a release blatantly accused the current government of reversing the land rights of the indigenous people. The statement said, open quote, "We in the PPPC recognize that the most precious asset for the First Peoples is the protection of their lands from encroachment. Land represents their relationship with their environment and ability to survive and prosper." End quote. In fact, all land titles held by the Amerindian communities were issued by the PPPC government. Not one land title or extension of land titles have been granted since the APNU-AFC coalition took office in May 2015.
Give us our lands, give us that full ownership to our lands, and we will contribute hugely to national development, but also to the protection of nature, not only for Guyana, but for the world at large.
According to the chairman, every Tushao has equal responsibility to ensure the development of the indigenous people they serve. Meanwhile, Minister within the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, Valerie Lowe, in her remarks noted that the conference is important as it allows the leaders of the First People of Guyana to make representation of their people each year. She stressed that the burning issues are highlighted and solutions are put forward to ensure development of Guyana's hinterland communities.
Leaders, this is where you and your government get to plan and work together to achieve your dreams for our brothers and sisters in the hinterland. So this gathering of Tushaos is most important. Most important to the women and children waiting for you to return to your villages. Most important to the youth of the villages. And most important to the men of the villages. Your time here is precious, indeed. So from today and the next 4 days, while you meet old friends and bond with new ones, let us use this forum wisely.
The feature address was made by President David Granger, who noted that the coalition government has made strides to improve the livelihoods of Guyana's First People. According to the president, Guyana is moving towards becoming an inclusive society and highlighted some of the projects completed since they took office.
My friend, hinterland human development has improved appreciably over the past 4 years. Indigenous peoples are enjoying better access to public education, public health, public information, public infrastructure, public security, public telecommunications, and social security.
Indigenous Peoples Affairs Minister Sidney Alicock mirrored the statements made by the head of state. He further added that government is committed to ensure that the land rights of the indigenous peoples are protected. The conference is being held under the theme Guyana's First Peoples United in the Promotion of the Green Economy through the preservation of our languages, land and rights. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shikima Day. Following the recent flooding as a result of springtide, several farmers in the flood-hit communities are still waiting for things to return to normalcy. Globespan 24x7 News caught up with General Secretary of the Rice Producers Association, Mr. Dharam Kumar Siraj, who detailed the actual condition on the ground and what is being done to remedy any affection to that rice crops. Details in this Kingsley Byron report.
In an exclusive interview with this newscast, General Secretary of the Guyana Rice Producers Association, Dharam Kumar Siraj, said the recent flooding brought on as a result of the springtide resulted in damages to a number of farmers in the affected areas. Siraj recently returned from a visit to the areas where he observed that the damages can easily be placed in the millions.
The most seriously affected region is region number 5. In particular, the area between the right bank of the Mahaika River to the left bank of the Maikoni River. This is sort of a catchment area because these two rivers would have isolated the floodwaters from going either east or west, and hence that catchment area was severely affected. Loss in rice is approximately 300 acres. That will amount to, if you use like an average of 30 bags per acre at the going price of about $3,000 per bag, you're talking there about $27 million in loss directly to rice itself. Outside of that, homesteads have been affected between the Dehoop Fayfield area. That's the Dehoop on the western side going up to Fayfield, on the eastern side of the area where the breach occurred in the Columbia area. And you'll have residences affected and people would have lost appliances, especially on the ground floor.
Siraj highlighted that there were other issues that compounded the severity of the situation.
What compounded the problem is the failure, I think, by MMA to monitor the situation and to be proactive. This forced residents and farmers to take matters into their own hands, and in a number of cases you have had what I will term vandalism of the infrastructure, where people who are affected, basically they cut the dams to relieve the water from that area, and this was not done in a planned way. And what resulted is that the salt water spread in other areas. That is correct. So instead of containment, you have a spreading of the water. And
he added that the situation is not yet contained, but one boon is the break in the spring tide. Siraj further noted that while the amount of acres that were damaged as a result of the flooding on the largest scale appears small, there are more far-reaching effects.
Normally, flooded conditions by fresh water is not a problem. But you're talking here salt water. So in effect, you'll have about between 24 to 36 months effect on the arable land itself. So it will take that amount of time, quite a long time. You know, you're talking about, you know, about 4 to 5 crops effectively that people will not be able to cultivate. And if some farmers do try, you'll have limited productivity because of the effect of the salt water on the land itself. So it's not a situation that you can get rid of the water within a week and then, you know, 2 weeks down the road you can start cultivation. That's not going to happen.
The RPA General Secretary said that Guyana will be celebrating over a century being a rice-producing nation. And while fluctuations are bound to happen, there are a few things to be done to ensure the sustainability of the rice industry, given its importance to the economy.
And the infrastructure that we have in place is built on solid foundation. And no matter what happens, rice will always be a part of what Guyana is. My prognosis is that given proper support, the rice sector, the agriculture sector of this country can only get bigger and better. But if it is not giving the proper support, you'll have a contraction, and that contraction has started already, right? You'll have a contraction, but we will always be in agriculture. And that is why we need to manage the sector properly. Like every other sector in the world, it is a sector that needs support. It doesn't need taxes to grow. It needs incentives to grow.
Apart from the damage to rice, CRAM concluded that considerable damage was also witnessed to homesteads and livestock. For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan.
A miner lost his life tragically after a mining pit in which he was working collapsed on Tuesday, adding to the long list of persons who have died under those same circumstances in the industry over the years. More in this report. The dead man has been identified as Ryan Taylor of Albert Street, Albertown, Georgetown. Taylor was attached to the Troy Resources mining operations at Kuruni Region 7. According to reports, Taylor and his colleagues were working in a pit early this morning when a section collapsed. Globespan 24x7 News understands that Taylor was working on the section that collapsed. The group tried to get him out as soon as they could, but by that time, he was dead. Since news of his demise, there have been an outpouring of messages of grief and shock. But one friend posted on social media that the area was a time bomb awaiting to explode. The friend of the deceased went on to state that the environment was one of the most unsafe places. They always complained of not making targets and chased the goal without seriously considering the safety of locals, the friend added. Natural Resources Minister Raphael Trotman and staff has since expressed their sincerest condolences to the relatives and friends of Taylor. The minister has since instructed the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission to begin making the necessary preparations for a thorough investigation of the matter. A report is to be compiled and submitted upon completion. In the interim, all work in the area of construction has been ordered ceased, pending the investigations. The ministry continues to urge miners and companies to exercise extreme care when carrying out these operations. The ministry further urges all involved in the sector to always be in compliance to evade any risks and fatalities as the above. In January 2018, 23-year-old Handel Payne, also called Daggy, of Canefield Housing Scheme East Bank, Demerara, died after the mining pit in which he was working at 35 miles Kanara back dam collapsed. In April 2018, a miner named Kevin Adams, 25, of Linden, Region 10, died at Chinese Creek back dam, Mazaruni River, after a pit caved in and buried him alive. 1 month later, in May, Kenny Rani, 20, a resident of Camarang, Upper Mazaruni River, died after he was covered in mud after a wall of a mining pit in which he was working collapsed at Pepper Camp Back Dam, Upper Mazaruni River. Again, 1 month later in June, miner Elmo Adams died after he too was buried alive after the walls of a pit caved in at Imbamadai, Upper Mazaruni. Back in 2015, 10 persons died in a mining pit in the Konarawak area after it collapsed. The incident saw 17 miners being buried under a pile of dirt and rubble, but 7 managed to escape alive with various injuries. The deaths were blamed on heavy rains in the area, improper mining design, and poor safety practices at the mining camps. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shikima Day. The Central Bank of Guyana has indicated that a probe will be launched to ascertain the reasons why the U.S. currency skyrocketed to a whopping $2.30 at the weekend. Globespan 24x7 News sought comments from 2 economically astute Guyanese on Tuesday to provide a better understanding of what the cause of the fluctuations and possible remedies. Kingsley Bryan brings you the details in this report.
The issue of shortages of foreign currency, specifically the US dollar, on the local market at certain intervals is nothing new, but continues to be a bother when it arises. Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Gobin Ganga, relayed that the issue has caught the attention of the government, since over $6 million was pumped into local banks, and a probe will be launched to determine the reasons. Chartered accountant and political commentator Christopher Ram, in an exclusive telephone interview with Globespan 24x7 News, opined that the Bank of Guyana may have underestimated the situation.
It's a normal feature of a floating exchange rate. But what we should be worried about is if the decline persists and there is no correction in the system. Now, if the Bank of Guyana is saying that it has plugged money into the market and it's not having any effect, then we might very well be running down our reserves without any without the desired results.
Ram noted that the price for foreign currency always depends on the relationship between supply and demand. He highlighted, however, that while the issue is not new, there would be cause for worry if certain trends continue.
Well, perhaps the Bank of Guyana thought it might have been a temporary hiccup in the market and is now recognizing this is a more systemic and prolonged and substantial issue.
Ram posited that the reasons for the fluctuation are multiple, one of which may be the political uncertainty that prevailed, and as such welcomed the investigations, but deemed them late since the issue has prevailed for too long. On the other hand, financial analyst Sesnarayan Singh opined that while the factors for the fluctuations may be many, a number of other economic indicators must be used to make an accurate determination.
One factor has been the state of the Trinidadian and the Barbadian economy has been a key driver in the extraction of notes from this economy. They've been bringing Bajan dollars and Trinidadian dollars into Guyana persistently, not just now, for more than a year this has been happening. And they have been exchanging it for US dollars and taking those notes back to their country because they need those monies to supplement their economy. So the Cubans are also bringing euros and Canadian dollars to Guyana and exchanging it for US dollars, because there's a shortage of US dollar notes in Cuba, and nobody is really taking proactive measure.
Singh said two separate transactions have to be taken into account: the actual physical notes and wire transfers. He said there may be a handle on the wire transfer aspect, but a better handle is needed on the notes.
I think the government is being a bit, lethargic in taking proactive action in stopping these Trinidadian and Bajan traders from lifting money. I mean, big companies, I don't want to call name, but they have some big Trinidadian companies in Guyana. They are actively involved in lifting these monies out to Guyana, actively. And it's a serious, they're into supermarkets, they're bringing a lot of these products, they're into pharmaceuticals, all these things, and they're lifting US dollars out of this country in a...
Singh also posited that the probe by the bank is welcomed, and he's confident that the governor is well equipped to carry out investigations. He, however, urged that it is concluded swiftly, since the Christmas season may result in even higher rates and the reemergence of an underground market. For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan.
PAHU WHO representative Dr. William Adukro has announced that Guyana has been free of the yellow fever disease since the year 1968, a feat that has been possible due to stringent efforts by key officials in Guyana's government and international bodies. Here is more in that report. Yellow fever continues to be a major public health problem in the Americas. Despite vaccination in endemic areas, sporadic cases and outbreaks continue to occur. The cycle involves the circulation of the yellow fever virus among non-human primates and mosquitoes that live in trees in tropical rainforests. In light of this, the Pan American Health Organization PAHU organized a 4-day workshop, which commenced earlier this morning, aimed to structure a system and capacity building for the surveillance of non-human primates and applied entomology of yellow fever in Guyana. Dr. William Adukro, PAHU's Guyana representative, in his address to the participants, stated that the World Health Organization strategy for the elimination of yellow fever is a global one for the optimized control of the disease.
The strategic objective of the elimination is to protect populations at risk, prevent international spread, and contain outbreaks quickly. For this, it is recommended: 1. Introduction of the yellow fever vaccine in the National Vaccination Scheme for children in endemic countries achieving high vaccination coverage. National vaccination campaigns for the population residing in risk areas and updating campaigns in susceptible geographical areas according to age groups and specific subpopulations.
According to Dr. Adukro, it is considered a positive to note that Guyana has been yellow fever free since 1968. But, he said, we need to work to keep that standard.
In 2019, 3 countries in the region of the Americas, Bolivia, Brazil, and Peru, reported confirmed yellow fever cases occurring between December 2018 and February 2019. In 2018, there were 5 countries and territories in the region of the Americas that reported confirmed cases of yellow fever: Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, French Guyana, and Peru. Guyana borders especially...
Since Guyana shares borders with these countries, Dr. Crow said Guyana should be on the alert. Meanwhile, Deputy CEO of the Guyana Livestock Development Authority, Dwight Waldron, pointed out that the workshop was timely since Guyana is venturing into the oil business. He noted that with oil comes several health challenges.
Guyana is becoming an important hub in this part of the world. We heard about flights next year from Ghana and other countries that would be coming directly to Chedijagan International Airport. I think that by itself should tell us what we should expect moving forward. From the GLDA standpoint, we are going to continue to work to ensure that all zoonotic diseases, our One Health program, we're going to continue to ensure that they're fully funded as much as we can, so as to ensure that we can allow the Guyanese population, those expats, persons visiting, to be comfortable.
The objective of the non-human primate surveillance mechanism is to prevent the occurrence of human cases through a thorough investigation of episodics and investigations of the presence of the yellow fever virus in non-human primates and in vectors. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shikima Day. On Wednesday, while a date for election has been named, a return to the National Assembly was something that many Guyanese are unsure of. And while the government has maintained that they would not on October 10, the opposition is still not in support of that move. Kingsley Bryan will take you through the series of events that led to this issue and try to explain what could happen next.
President David Granger, following his announcement that general and regional elections will be held on March 2, 2020, had signaled his intention to see the political opposition return to the National Assembly to facilitate the extension of the 3-month period for the holding of these elections. This is in keeping with Article 106(7) of the Constitution, which states, notwithstanding its defeat, the government shall remain in office and shall hold an election within 3 months, or such long a period as the National Assembly shall, by resolution supported by not less than 2/3 of the votes of all the elected members of the National Assembly, determine, and shall resign after the President takes the oath of office following the election. The government's intention to facilitate a return to Parliament in these extraordinary circumstances have been touted to be a precautionary method. The approved extension by the National Assembly will ensure that elections 2020 cannot be successfully challenged legally, and that is to ensure an extension of the elections date by a 2/3 majority of the National Assembly is granted. At the party's press conference last Friday, PNCR Executive Member and Attorney General Basil Williams, at that instance, expressed that should the opposition not return to Parliament when and if it is reconvened, their actions would be tantamount to creating a constitutional crisis. At that juncture, he also posited that should the opposition fail to return to the National Assembly, the President would be forced to enact what he deemed the doctrine of necessity. With the President's intended date of October 10 fast approaching and the main political opposition maintaining their stance of not returning to the National Assembly, there's a feeling of anxiety as it relates to the life and validity of this 11th Parliament. Globespan 24x7 News made contact with the Parliament office, but is still to receive further clarification on the processes and correct timelines, given the Parliament has been in recess since the fateful night of December 21, 2018, and throughout the numerous court cases that followed. Clerk of the National Assembly Sherlock Isaacs, in an invited comment, noted that none of the chief whips have relayed their intention to return to Parliament, and as such there is no order paper or agenda planned should the House reconvene in October. While it has been acknowledged that the dissolution of Parliament is not synonymous with the naming of an elections date, it is understood that the two processes usually accompany each other. It is also understood that the government can return to the Parliament within the confines of their majority, but will be unable to seek the necessary extension. The question still remains, what will be on the agenda when Parliament reconvenes? Or is the life of this Parliament already expired? Another question is it fast approaching the same? For Globespan 24x7 News, this is Kingsley Bryan. Good evening. Here's a recap of news in the diaspora, region, and around the world. In the headlines, Guyana to receive $1 billion aid from the EU-UN initiative to fight domestic violence. Meeting of the Americas reveals illegal wildlife trade rapidly growing. And the U.S. blacklists 28 Chinese entities amid growing trade war. Former South African president to face the law for accusations against him. And Typhoon Ajibis to hit Japan today, dubbed the biggest storm since 1985. And now the news in detail. Guyana is expected to benefit from $1 billion under a Spotlight initiative between the United Nations and the European Union to aid in domestic violence, but with government's current political state, it is uncertain when or how international funding can be accepted. Globespan 24x7 News reached out to the permanent mission of Guyana in New York, as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Guyana for further clarification on how government's current position will affect same. But efforts were unsuccessful. Yesterday, the UN Resident Coordinator and United Nations Development Program Resident, during a presentation at the 13th National Two-House Council Conference in Guyana, revealed that following consultations with government and civil society, the program will be implemented in communities across Regions 4 and 5 and Regions 1 and 7. The initiative aims at ending all forms of violence against women and girls, targeting those that are most prevalent and contribute to gender inequality across the world. The Spotlight Initiative will deploy targeted large-scale investments in Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Pacific, and the Caribbean, aimed at achieving significant improvements in the lives of women and girls. Guyana is one of the countries in the Caribbean to benefit from this transformative initiative. The overall vision of the Spotlight Initiative in Guyana is that women and girls realize their full potential in a violence-free, gender-responsive, and inclusive way. Also, we told you that 69 people ranging from the ages of 19 to 70 years have been found locked away in cages in what authorities are calling victims of modern-day slavery and human trafficking. According to Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, they have cracked on what is believed to be the biggest human trafficking ring in the country. Some of the victims are said to have been caged for years. Griffith said there's a much bigger picture, and TTPS and authorities will be combing through each case thoroughly. He said the situation relates to virtual slavery and is barbaric. Some of the victims have been tortured in horrendous ways. During a sting operation coordinated by Griffith and executed by the Special Operation Response Team and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, they rescued the 69 Trinidad and Tobago citizens, 65 men and 4 women. They were all held captive, where most of them were in cages and some in handcuffs. A high-level conference in Peru was told that illegal wildlife trade is increasing in the Americas. The conference heard that after drugs, guns, and human trafficking, wildlife trafficking is the world's most lucrative organized crime, with an annual value of around $20 billion each year, according to a 2016 report by Interpol and the United Nations Environment Program. As the world's most biodiversified continent, Latin America is a hub for criminal trade. Wildlife trafficking is increasing in most countries in the region. Interpol's head of forest crimes, Salvador Ortega, said whether it is a trade in wildlife or dead animals in their parts, the countries from which they originate need to take the crime more seriously. He emphasized that they need to understand that they are part of the supply chain for a transnational criminal organization. The 27 mostly Latin American and Caribbean countries at the conference agreed to share intelligence and enforcement and take the crime more seriously. And we'll tell you that about 50 police officers have been taken hostage and indigenous groups have blocked roads and highways as protests against the state's neoliberal economic policies continues in Ecuador. Radicals have been on the forefront of the struggle against IMF-imposed reforms and against the police state that is attempting to enforce these reforms with brutality. Protests began when Ecuador's corrupt president Lenin Moreno announced the end of fuel subsidies. Hundreds of people were arrested, dozens of police officers hurt, several police cars destroyed, and a local government building was attacked, the authorities said. Ecuador's government has agreed to cut public spending as part of a loan deal with the International Monetary Fund. The agreement signed in March allows Ecuador to borrow $4.2 billion. Also, we reported that several senior Taliban members have been released in exchange for 3 kidnapped Indian engineers, sources in the militant group told the BBC. The 11 Taliban reported freed included a member of the militant Akani group. The Indians released on Sunday were part of a group of 7 engineers kidnapped more than a year ago, with their driver in northern Afghanistan. The news came after the Taliban were said to have met the U.S. peace envoy for the first time since talks collapsed. Zalmay Khalilzad reportedly met senior members of the group in Pakistan last week, almost a month after President Donald Trump canceled the secret plans to host a Taliban delegation in the United States. Also, the Department of Commerce has announced that 28 Chinese companies to its entity list, a trading blacklist which forces U.S. companies to seek government permission before they can do business with any firms listed on it. The department cited human rights violations as its reasons for banning the 28 companies. Specifically, these entities have been implicated in human rights violations and abuses in the implementation of China's campaign of repression, mass arbitrary detention, and high-technology surveillance. The ban will cut the companies off from potentially crucial American suppliers and marks a fresh escalation in the ongoing geopolitical spat, even as officials prepare to sit down to resume talks in coming weeks. Globespan 24x7 News also reported that 2 weeks before October 21 elections, Canada's 6 party leaders took the stage at the National History Museum in Quebec on Monday night, with only one official English language debate scheduled. Scheer and Trudeau went back and forth, and the debate mostly saw Trudeau defending his record from just about everyone else on stage. Meanwhile, the NDP's Jagmeet Singh took advantage of the Scheer-Trudeau's scuffles by getting in a few well-timed chirps about how much the two bickered. It worked a few times, and Singh may have again distinguished himself for the positive messaging this campaign. That may help him going into the 2023 election. The 2019 Canadian federal election will take place on October 21, 2019. And that will be to elect members of the House of Commons to the 43rd Canadian Parliament. And the EU leaders have pulled apart the UK's Brexit proposals, accusing Boris Johnson of putting forward untested ideas to solve the Irish border crisis. Chief negotiator Michael Barnier said the EU needed workable solutions today, not tomorrow, end of quote. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker told MEPs that while he would not exclude a deal in the coming days, progress had been limited. Mr. Johnson has said he remains cautiously optimistic about a deal. He will meet his Irish counterpart, Leo Varadkar, on Thursday to try and break the deadlock, while continuing to insist the UK will leave on October 31 with or without an agreement. In Westminster, meanwhile, a group of Conservative MPs have been demanding assurances from the PM that he will not take the party into the next general election, whenever it comes, on a straightforward promise to leave with no deal. Also, the lockdown in Indian-administered Kashmir has cost the region's economy more than $1 billion in 2 months, and this is according to industry experts. A government official who did not wish to be named says they are awaiting a financial package from the federal government. But the Kashmir Chamber of Commerce and Industry estimates the shutdown has already cost the region more than $1.4 billion, and thousands of jobs have been lost. But the situation may improve in the coming days, as the government has announced that tourists will be allowed in the state from Thursday. 2 months on, the situation is far from normal. Internet and mobile phone connections remain suspended. Public transport is not easily available, and most businesses are shut, some in protest against the government, and others for fear of reprisals from militants opposed to Indian rule. There is also a shortage of skilled labor, as some 400,000 migrants have left since the lockdown began. We also reported that South Africa's former president, Jacob Zuma, has lost the bid to avoid prosecution for corruption charges. According to details surrounding the probe, the case has been hanging over Mr. Zuma's head for more than a decade, and his legal team has been on the sidelines fighting for lawmakers to scrap the charges. But High Court judges have disagreed. Zuma could now go on to trial to face allegations that he accepted bribes from arms dealers unless he appeals against the High Court's decision. He has 5 days to say whether he will appeal. The state has accused him of accepting bribes for a multi-million-dollar deal to supply arms to South Africa in the 1990s. He has pleaded not guilty to the allegations and claims the case is political conspiracy to tarnish his good name. And according to a UN report, Turkey has pressed on with its cross-border offensive on Kurdish-held areas, to which ends thousands have fled their homes in fear of being caught in the crossfire. Many people are sheltering in schools or other buildings in AROUCA city and the town of Tal Tamr, the UN says. Turkey acted on Wednesday after US President Donald Trump pulled American troops out of the area. At least 11 civilians have died. Humanitarian groups say the number of people affected will rise further. Reports are that dozens of fighters from the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, and pro-Turkish factions have been killed. The first death of a Turkish soldier was confirmed by Turkey's military. Turkey defended its offensive as a bid to create a safe zone, free of Kurdish militias, which could also house Syrian refugees. One major concern for the international community is the fate of thousands of suspected IS prisoners, including many foreign nationals, being guarded by Kurdish-led forces in the region. And to end the news, Japan is bracing itself for what could be the worst typhoon in 60 years, as meteorologists keep a close eye on Typhoon Agibus, edging closer to the country. Agibus, which means speed, is hitting winds of 180 kilometers per hour, which could cause floods and landslides, according to the Japan Meteorological Agency. The typhoon is expected to hit the most populous island of Honshu on Saturday. Shops, factories, and train networks have been shut down, while the Rugby World Cup and the Formula One Grand Prix are facing disruption. Authorities have issued evacuation advisories in areas at particular risk, while supermarkets are running low on stocks as people buy supplies before the typhoon hits. Agibus, which means speed in the Philippine language Tagalog, is due to hit Japan on Saturday. It could be the strongest storm the country has faced since Kanagawa typhoon in 1958, which left more than 1,200 people dead or missing. Flooding advisory has been announced. And that's the news recap for today. Stay tuned for more news to come right here on Globespan 24x7 News.
The Guyana Hindu Dharmic Sabha on Wednesday condemned the actions of a popular promoter who posted an ad on social media advertising a party bus slated to be held for the annual Diwali motorcade. More in this report. Yet another year has come where the Guyana Hindu Dharmic Sabha has to call on promoters not to use religious events as an excuse to host alcohol-fueled activities. This call comes once again after a flyer was circulating on Facebook advertising a Diwali motorcade party bus meant to partake in the annual Diwali motorcade slated for October 26. According to President of the Guyana Hindu Dharmic Sabha, Dr. Vindhya Prasad, they try to keep the event on a spiritual level, as celebrations of Diwali is one free of alcohol.
Because we have 8 of these every year, and we want to maintain that sanctity because it's the prelude to Diwali, which is on the 27th. So we urge those persons taking part to adhere to it in terms of what we ask. No alcohol, it's vegetarian, and it is in keeping with the message and theme of Diwali. So we engage those persons who had that ad up, and they agreed to cancel it. It was not in any acrimonious manner. They agreed to cancel it, but we will, as always, encourage the thousands of Guyanese who come out in all of their grandeur to come and enjoy the procession, as always.
According to Dr. Prasad, the promoter cancelled the event, but such an issue should not have been conceptualized or implemented in the first place.
Well, we have always, whether it's Diwali, Bhagwan, Navratri, whatever our festivals are, during all of these festivals, we stay away from alcohol. We have a vegetarian diet, and it's sacred, and a lot of it is associated with our puja, our prayers. So we ask, if you're holding an event, do not associate any event with any of those things using the name Diwali, Phagwa, Navra, any of those things. We just ask you, please don't do that, because it is disrespectful in every way, and we'd like you to desist from that.
Pandit Deodat, president of the Golden Om Dharmic Youth Organization, also commented on the issue, citing that Guyanese must learn to respect others' religion.
I'm very disheartened when promoters would use sacred holidays such as Deepavali and Phagwa or any other religious holiday that has great significance to its followers, to use it as an opportunity to promote events that bears vulgarity, that bears alcohol consumption, and anything that lends towards the desecration of the sacredness of these festivals. And this has not been a new phenomenon.
For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day. As President David Granger accepted the letter of credence from Ambassador of the State of Qatar to Guyana on Wednesday, he announced that his government is seeking to further strengthen partnerships with the Arab country as it relates to the oil and gas sector. We'll tell you more in this report. On Thursday, the Georgetown Public Hospital Ophthalmology Department held a free screening and eye testing activity at the Matai Supermarket in observance of World Eyesight Day 2019. The activity saw a call being made to the general populace to get screened for silent eye diseases. Here is that report. Each year on October 10, countries worldwide observe World Sight Day, an international day of awareness held annually on the second Thursday of October to focus attention on the global issue of eyesight health. This year, the theme is Vision First, a call to nations to ensure that everyone has access to affordable eye care. World Eyesight Day provides a platform for organizations to encourage governments, corporations, institutions, and individuals to actively support global blindness prevention efforts. The Georgetown Public Hospital Department of Ophthalmology has been spearheading World Sight Day activities in Guyana, with various activities being done over the years to promote vision health, education, and awareness. Today, the ophthalmology team branched off to Matai Supermarket, where over 200 Guyanese were given free access to eye screens and tests. Dr. Shalindra Sugrim spoke with Globespan 24x7 News and explained that the department has been vigorously campaigning for persons to take their eye health seriously.
Public awareness materials, we print about diseases of the eye, we do radio programs, we also print flyers, posters, we do, like we have here today, free eye screening, because a lot of the eye diseases, patients suffer with them and they're not aware of it.
Dr. Sugrim noted that most persons are not aware that they suffer from an eye disease unless they are screened, but sometimes it's too late.
For example, diabetic retinopathy, which is where the blood vessels of the eye become damaged, and also glaucoma. So patients can be moving around as per normal, doing regular duties, and they're not aware that these conditions exist. That's why it's important for us to spread awareness about these diseases and also do regular checks. We encourage you patients.
According to Dr. Sugrim, cataract is the most common eye disease seen by the department.
The common disease in Guyana is cataract. Following that, we have diabetic retinopathy, refraction errors. Those are spectacle issues. And we also have glaucoma. Yeah. Other minor problems we see from time to time include trauma, infections, stuff like that.
75% of blindness is avoidable. 3 out of 4 people have avoidable visual impairment. Remember to take an eye test soon. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day. That was a viral audio recording of opposition leader Dr. Bar Jagdeo venting his frustrations over the appearance of West Indies star batsman Chris Gayle at the PNC's anniversary.
No, tell me friend, buddy. Yes, but tell him that you just getting your bad book here. He just cussing every
observances over the weekend. Following its circulation on several social media platforms, the opposition leader came in for great condemnation and rebuke, with many expressing that the conduct is unbecoming for someone who holds such high office in the land. However, Dr. Jagdeo, at his weekly press briefing on Thursday, said he was truly remorseful that the Guyanese populace had to be subjected to a temporary lapse in his behavior. Jagdeo.
The tape proves that, and let me say to people, I do get angry, and let me say to them again, when I get angry, sometimes I use expletives, and I am sorry that people had to be exposed to that, because APNU
further went on to explain that his reaction was in response to being lied to, and unlike divine beings, untruths tend to bear on persons differently, and his reaction was only human. The opposition leader further explained that as much as this conversation was held in private, it should never be understood that he entertained certain conversations, especially those of racism. He said his anger stemmed from the fact that Chris Gayle, as a sportsman, would never endorse a political party in Guyana, and the shame falls on the administration for their blatant trickery of the cricketer. Jagdeo maintained that his anger never stemmed from Chris Gayle's apparent chumminess with his political opponents. When questioned on the issue by news sources, Gordon Mosley, what then spurred his anger and the significance of being placed in his Jagdeo's bad book, a tit-for-tat erupted. That went like this. Chris Gayle has since released a statement saying that he is completely apolitical and was indeed tricked into attending the event in Linden under the guise of interacting with his fan base there. In other news, there has been much controversy surrounding the life of the 11th Parliament and the reasons as to why it has not yet been dissolved. The government has repeatedly signaled its intention to return to the National Assembly, so much so that several ministers of the government and the President himself have urged the opposition to reconsider their position. However, the main political opposition, the PPPC, is adamant that they will not return to Parliament since it is not necessary, as they will not be blackmailed into extending the life of the APNU-AFC government. The opposition's chief whip in the National Assembly, Gayle Teixeira, in an exclusive telephone interview with Globespan 24x7 News, indicated that unless the necessary processes are followed, a return to Parliament by the government could not be nothing more than mere speculation. Teixeira reiterated the party's position that there is no need for a return to the National Assembly and stressed that this fact is also known by the government side of the House. In the President's address to the nation on September 25, 2019, he was quoted as saying, "The government of Guyana must, as a consequence, return to the National Assembly to request an extension." The National Assembly reconvenes on the 10th of October 2019. As such, there were speculations that given the timeline of events following the passage of the no-confidence motion, the government's return to Parliament was on the basis of legitimizing their status by seeking an extension under Article 106(7) of the Constitution. However, Teixeira suggested that, although the return might not happen soon, there may be other reasons for government to return to the House. But the opposition...
Mr. Granger's own speech on September 26, when he named the date that he did not need to go back to Parliament. He knows he does not need to go back to Parliament.
Whip stated that outrightly that even if that is the case, a return to Parliament would still not be necessary. Teixeira concluded that she has no doubt the government side will attempt to go back to Parliament. Nonetheless, and opposition will not be returning to the National Assembly, even in the eventuality a budget is proposed, as there is no need for a budget before the elections. On the other hand, it was expressed by the Attorney General, Basil Williams, that should the opposition not return to Parliament, it may create a constitutional crisis and other measures will be needed.
And that they don't need to do either, because under the Constitution and under the financial rules, 2020, they can take 1/13 per month of what was in the 2019 budget and allocate it until elections. So there's no need for them to go back to Parliament. But they may go back.
The National Assembly, Sherlock Isaacs, has since relayed that there is no indication from either side when the next sitting will be, although the National Assembly comes out of recess on October 10. Electrical issues remain the leading cause of fires in Guyana. This was disclosed to the media on Friday at the Guyana Fire Services Fire Safety and Fair and Exhibition 2019 at Durban Park. We'll have more in this report. In celebration of Fire Prevention Week 2019, the Guyana Fire Service today hosted a fire safety fair and exhibition, which saw a number of schools from the Georgetown area being educated on the importance of fire safety. Fire Prevention Officer Sheldon Sonner relayed to media operatives that most of the fires being attended to so far for 2019 have an electrical origin. He stressed that most of the electrical fires stem from illegal Guyana power and light connections.
Practical-wise, most of the fires that we have in Guyana stems from electrical nature. What we find is that person or persons would resort to actually tampering with electrical connections, or let us say steal electricity. All right? It is my advice to them to desist from doing so, because what we would have scrutinized also is that due to these things, having illegal connections and so forth, or overloading your circuit breaker in your homes, it contributes a lot to not just electrical fires, but fires in the whole.
According to the FPO, persons should desist from starting domestic fires if they are not prepared to control its effects.
Fire safety and firefighting is not only the Guyana Fire Service's business, but also members of the public, right? Because we have persons who would, within their surroundings, light these illegal fires, and then sometimes it spreads into something big. It can also catch houses and these sort of things too. So it is our advice, coupled with our team for this year, 2019, save lives, protect property, strive towards a greener environment. Because we're looking at the green initiative. If we were to look at the fire in the Amazon and its effect, and the amount of animals and so forth, and persons who would have suffered from that, you understand? That is what we're actually trying to capture.
Electrical fires for the year 2018 were at 17, but so far for the year 2019, that number has increased to 28. The students from the various schools were treated to a foot drill, exhibition, and live control fire exercise, where students saw firsthand the procedures carried out by fire tenders to extinguish a blaze, along with response to injured persons. Reporting from Durban Park for Fire Prevention Week 2019, Shakima Day for Globespan 24x7. You'll hear now that Opposition Member of Parliament for Region 10. You'll hear now that Opposition Member of Parliament for Region 1, Colin Crowell, is baffled as the wider coalition government is now making their rounds to the hinterland region after neglecting it for over 4 years. He made these comments at a press conference held on Friday, citing that the National Two Showers Conference is being held when the coalition government is in full campaign mode. The opposition MP stressed...
But if you examine how this government, caretaker government, operates, first of all, whereby how do they spend the money and equitably distributed among the regions, it is only intended to be one of fanfare, because if you're talking about resolving issues within the region, Mabaruma is not Region 1, Bartica is not Region 7, Letem is not Region 9. And that is how this government, first of all, resolve their issues. Because as was said, 5-10 planes fly into the region with a number of ministers. For example, on the 19th of September, we had in Region 1 about 5 plane loads along with the 2 caravans that the president used. So we're talking about, and those of us who knows the figure, a charter for an island is about 400,000. And so you do the maths. and for a few hours.
Baseless visits by not only the head of state and government ministers, but also technical staff, are nothing but acts of fanfare, meant to spend taxpayers' money recklessly. He further mentioned that the fact that the conference The opposition MP stressed that the frequent baseless visits by not only the head of state and government ministers, but also technical staff, are nothing but acts of fanfare meant to spend the taxpayers' money recklessly. He further mentioned the fact that at the conference, the two showers are not able to tackle the real issues at hand, but are merely there for show. According to Kroll, the PPP's plan, when compared to what the current interim government has implemented, they have the Guyana's first people best intention at heart.
Measure that what we plan for the two shows. A two shows conference for us is one where we interact, where we deal with issues, we listen to their concerns, you listen in a timely manner. If you check the agenda for this week, each ministry was given half an hour. By the time the minister finished making his presentation, his or her presentation, you're talking about 50 minutes to 20 minutes finished. How much time is there to raise your concerns? In the PPPC time, when we had the National Two Showers Conference, even up to the president met and sat with those two showers a minimum of 2 days, minimum. And the ministers had to be there to listen so that once their officers who are assigned within the region are not resolving those issues, then we went back, we sent those issues to the sectoral ministers, and they had to address them with their staff. As against now, we are presenting to the two showers, as Comrade Nigel said, we are presenting an agenda, a positive developmental agenda. And we have said within the first month upon winning the election next March, we have an agenda that will see us paving the way for us to have...
The pensioner was discovered dead between October 9 and 10, 2019, police say. The dead woman has been identified as Marva Utkirk of Lot 241 Border Street, Georgetown. She was discovered on a bed with a mosquito net wrapped tightly around her neck. According to police, the woman may have met her unfortunate demise between 16:30 hours and 18:30 hours on the set dates at her Border Street home. Her body is currently at the Lichen Funeral Home awaiting an autopsy. No arrests have been made. And that has brought us to the end of Globespan's 24/7 News Week in Review. Remember to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest on news in Guyana, the Caribbean, and around the world. I am Shakima Day, wishing you a safe and productive week ahead. On behalf of our news and technical team, until next time, to have a pleasant rest of the evening.